Come on.
Yeah, I know. Of course, he's got to get the camera.
Bravo, Russ.
First word. Happy Monday. Happy draft week. Yeah, Russ and I and Anthony will all be traveling down to the Lone Star State for some for some good barbecue. And I told everybody I got to do two things. I got to get good barbecue, and I have to go to Dealey Plaza and the School Book Depository, because I never know when I'm ever going to get back in Dallas, and I need to visit the site of a presidential assassination. So, okay,
that should be uplifting, right?
Yeah, you missed Captain Morbidity over here.
Come on, I'm sorry. It's a historical site.
It is.
Please.
Okay. You talk about barbecue. Now, you guys, barbecue is a major thing for my good American friends such as yourselves. What states don't have good barbecue?
New York.
New York doesn't have good barbecue. There's a lot.
They have good everything. How can they not have good barbecue?
The barbecue that we have here is basically, it's a Texas place, or it's this place. It's somebody who's transferred from Kentucky, and
I mean, of course, Manhattan has barbecue places.
Sure,
for people that were transplanted from other places,
right? Like Korean barbecue or something.
Right.
Like that.
But the issue is, let's just forget about Western New York for a minute. Not slighting them, Mike. Not this time.
Okay, no, that's fine.
But I just want to say, if you're in Manhattan, as an example, and let's say you grew up there and there were no transplants, you're not going to allocate so much space to like a smoker. You just can't. The smoker would take up like what 2 tables could be, making that in your kitchen. You know what I mean? So now places can do that, in after the fact, because they can find a cheap place in Manhattan, which is never cheap, but like an old abandoned place. And I know there were a few places.
Place in Manhattan are you talking about?
Yeah.
Well, they have they have like the meatpacking district. It's a little less than Midtown. But the idea is, it's just nobody grew up with that there, because you just had a charcoal barbecue where you had nothing. Like, there wasn't a big barbecue culture even.
Okay, so that never came north then. Like, Maine doesn't have it.
No, Maine's mostly seafood.
I know Washington State doesn't have it.
Yeah, no, it's Texas. It's
everyone's got their own play on how they do it. With a lot of it's about the different sauces that are applied to the meat that to the specific.
Carolina barbecue sauce is more vinegar based. St. Louis ribs.
We get a lot of stuff that advertises St. Louis barbecue up here. St. Louis ribs being one of the big ones.
And that's more molasses or ketchup based barbecue sauce. Now Texas, I mean, I've seen 50 episodes of Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives talking about barbecue in Texas. That's why it's like, Saturday night after the draft is done, I need some barbecue. I just have to do it.
Somewhere in DP, according to our friend Bill Meltzer, of course.
Yeah. No, he said he had a place, so that's where we're gonna go.
We're going with his rec.
yeah, exactly. No, it's funny. I'll just deviate to pizza here, and then let Russ.
Good thing I ate lunch already, Mike. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mike. With that, I might take up the rest of the time just on that.
Go ahead. We'll talk about pizza tomorrow. Then go ahead.
Let's do that tomorrow. So here's the other thing. So I will tell everybody, it's probably not a surprise. I've not watched any World Cup or U.S. Open, but I did see there's a scandal now with the U.S. Open, because Fox came out with a new technology and they wanted to mic up the holes. So they had like these super mics, and it picked up a conversation that 2 idiots had during the tournament. Now, here is my thing.
What was the conversation? Because I didn't hear.
Yeah, what is
it? It's bad sexual talk, and it's really like of an aggressive, bad nature. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
And it involves Muppets, apparently.
Yeah.
I'm not joking.
He's not joking. That's true. But here's the thing, and this is what really irks me. So a company comes out with technology because they want to bring the fans closer to a game. Now, 2 idiots will probably kill that technology forever, because Fox will now say, we're not going to use that because we just had to apologize for that, which, again, Fox's apology is so hollow, considering the garbage they put out on Fox News, that I can't even accept their apology. But just the whole thing is just stupid, and it's a shame. They came out with a technology that was probably interesting for viewers, and now a couple of idiots will ruin it.
Yeah. Here, let me tie this into a bigger point.
Yeah.
You bring in technology that's unchecked How many times have you been in a locker room, an area with athletes, Anthony, Mike, Russ, you guys know this, where you've heard something, and as a reporter and as a media, you go, that's not newsworthy. That's away from the camera. That's not an event that I report on. But you throw technology in unchecked, and no one's keeping an eye on this, and no one's using common sense.
Yes, but the problem is, Peter, is that our friend in Vancouver, wasn't it Jason Botchford who reported the thing about Joe Thornton and the comment that he made about 4 goals, what he would do if he scored 4 goals?
That was actually on Mike too.
Okay, it was on Mike.
But it was on Mike. And the problem with that is, and even one of Botchford's nemesis in the Vancouver media went to bat for him, saying the problem is they broadcast, they have an agreement, the broadcast team for the radio have an agreement to be in the locker room, and all sorts of things get picked up. And he goes, that could have been on there. The point is Thornton interrupted an interview. He knew better. And whether it was the right thing to report, he jumped in to talk about that. And he brought it on himself.
That's what happens. It becomes newsworthy then.
Now the other bit of technology, and then we'll get started with the show, that I there was a disputed goal in the World Cup. I can't remember which game it was. The game was tied 1-1. It was a goal where it hit the crossbar, bounced down.
You can't take my goals in soccer. That's just
right. But no, they didn't take it away, Russ. What they did was they used the same technology that the WTA uses for balls in and out in tennis, and it was unbelievable how they zoom in and the ball was like it was in by this much.
Yeah.
NHL, get off your butts here, because honestly,
we've talked about this. Like, this is obviously the technology. We've talked about this so many times. Yeah. They know it's out there. They just don't want to use it, Mike.
Soccer's used it for a while. They've used it in the Premier League, and
we've all been screaming for this. Like, tennis was the first to use it. It worked great. Nobody and the NHL just doesn't want to budge on this. They don't.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when a goaltender is hovering over a puck and you can't see whether it's over the line or not over the line,
it's like the goaltenders are like, sleight of hand artists. They are. If you counted how many goals that went in that they've sort of hidden or obscured in a season, it's probably a handful for every goalie in the league. So maybe that's why they don't want to do it. I don't know, but at some point, they either need to put a camera in there or do that technology, but so far they won't do it.
All right, let's start the show. Anthony, follow me. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Monday, June 18th, 2018.
I'm Anthony Majoni from Sunrise Philly Magazine.
I'm Peter Jesse from Winnipeg.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology. Got to go take the dog out.
And I'm Michael Agello from the Garden Spot of the World, Buffalo, New York, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. While Russ is taking out the dogs,
I guess we know who let the dogs.
Who let the dogs out?
Now we know.
Yeah, now we know. Yeah, exactly. We have a trade. We had a trade on unusual on a Friday night. Or Friday. It was late afternoon, I think.
It's always in that window, though, Mike. Do we always get? It's like late in the day when nobody on a Friday around 5 o'clock.
Yes, it's. The funny thing is that professional sports has learned something from politics. If you remember an old episode of The West Wing, they called it "Take Out the Trash Day." You let the news come out at Friday at 6 o'clock because newspapers don't, most people are off for the weekends, websites and whatever, and newspapers, the readership is down, and radio stations, they have their backup hosts on the weekends. So everything is going to wait until Monday, and then by the time Monday comes around, it's old news. But I think in Montreal, and to a lesser extent in Scottsdale or Glendale, this was a fairly significant deal. A 1-for-1 of Max Domi going to the Canadians for Alex Galchenyuk. Now, Russ, we'll start with you. I like Max Domi. I think he's a good player. I don't think he's as good as Galchenyuk, but the thing that sort of tips this deal for me is Montreal apparently is going to use Max Domi where he belongs, on the wing. Arizona, maybe they can get away with Alex Galchenyuk as the number 2 center behind Derek Stepan, or I don't know if they're going to use Keller up the middle, but they're still trying him at center, and that's the problem I have with this deal.
Okay, so there's a lot of things with this. So things that I've encountered in the last couple of days about this trade. Somehow in a parallel universe. Now again, take away all your biases and whatever you think about Alex Galchenyuk off the ice, because a lot of it's true and a lot of it isn't. So if we just look at the hockey players, how did Max Domi all of a sudden become the more skilled guy when I hear it from Toronto media? Like, I just think that that's become like a big joke.
I don't know if it's from Toronto. I don't know if it's from Toronto media, Russ.
Oh, no, it is. I just heard it on the midday show. Like, okay, if you heard it, Max Domi is the more skilled guy, and they're hoping for 20, 25 goals out of him. Listen, I never thought he was going to be more than a 45, 50-point guy. That's what he is. Now, how much ice time do you want to dedicate to making him a 20, 25 goal scorer? Because you probably can, but how much ice time do you want to give up to that and what that might take away from others? Galchenyuk can clearly score goals. Right. He's going to get started at the center spot because they probably think Stepan could look at him and maybe could fix him. Because, look, Derek Stepan, for all that we've bitched about him being a number one center, has done a pretty good job filling in at that spot when there's no way he was ever going to be that. Right. But the guy knows how to play, and he knows how to play defense and knows how to play hard. I think that will help Galchenyuk. If he has any kind of rub-off ability on Galchenyuk, this is a terrific trade for Arizona. I think this is a good trade for both, but I think Galchenyuk is a much higher level of goal scoring and skill than Domi does. But somehow over the weekend, that has flipped, north of the border.
Peter, the sort of random element here is Domi's under control for 4 more years. They signed him to a 2-year bridge deal at a little over $3 million a year, whereas Galchenyuk, I think he has another 3 years at $5 million. So it's I'll check while you're discussing this, but I mean that's a factor here. But I mean, to my mind, I think Galchenyuk is clearly the more talented of the two. I think Domi's talented, but I think Galchenyuk is more talented than Domi is.
I think you're probably right. The thing that came out that struck me with this trade was, once again, Montreal trades a player, and then all of the sudden, in the next 48 hours, the little bits of dirt start trickling out. Mm-hmm. And this is, now we know Montreal probably has the most voracious media, maybe not the biggest core, but voracious. It's got the French press, it's got the English press, it gets a lot of national coverage in Canada. But this, again, just like Subban 2 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. It all starts seeping out again. And you have to wonder, why does Montreal keep having these problems where, one, the stuff isn't dealt with because it clearly wasn't dealt with. 2, they keep finding players that have this kind of baggage, or that they realize later on don't fit in what they're trying to do. And why does this keep haunting them? And why do they, like, there seems to be a bigger problem with Montreal than just trading away problems. You keep acquiring problems. You keep acquiring things. Why are you not doing your diligence with your team, with your players, with your scouts?
Right.
I mean, as ruthless as the NFL is, a kid, they know about when a kid had a bad fart in grade 8. In hockey, no one cares like that. And Montreal has been a victim of it. It seems to me Montreal has consistently found a way to be a victim of players to get unhappy, and then all of a sudden dirt comes out once they get moved. So to that point, did Bergevin even get a fair deal because of this underlying dirt?
Well, if
it's true, and I'm not even sure it's true.
Well, it's we don't know if it's true or not, but I know.
Can we say one thing too, Mike?
Yeah,
Domi had an issue too.
Yeah.
Like, people don't even bring that up anymore, but he had an issue with all of his own that seems to have really gotten forgotten about because, again, I think anytime a Russian gets traded, it's easy to sort of default back to old biases for that too.
And Russian is,
I know he's American, but I'm just saying he's got a Russian name.
Yeah.
And the issue with Domi was the type 1 diabetes that everybody, and that's another issue, the health concern, which he seems to have controlled. But No, and the stuff about Galchenyuk has been in the ether for like a year. It's been around. I mean, that was one of the reasons why his name was always popping up. But Anthony, I mean, I look at this deal, and Galchenyuk has 2 more years at $4.9 million. So it's not. And Arizona right now with their, they're going to be looking to add players to get to the cap floor, so that the money is really not it actually helps them in a way. But I look at this, and I get what you're saying, Peter, regarding Montreal acquiring problems. Bergevin can't do anything right since the Subban deal. That ruined him in Montreal with the media and with the fans. And I think everything that he does is tainted by that. But Anthony, what did you think of this deal?
For me, I felt initially when the trade happened, the reaction of people to automatically railroad Montreal, I thought was a little bit harsh, because I think I do like Max Domi as a player. It made it sound like it was a completely slam dunk, Arizona wins this trade outright.
Right.
If you're looking on a pure talent scale, yeah, I would say, but again, to me, they're drastically different types of players.
Mm-hmm.
They just play a different style. It does kind of go closer to what Montreal wants, or Bergevin wants. Again, he's a sandpaper hockey player. He's just like his dad. And the part, in terms of, he's more skilled, but he still has that pugnacious attitude. And again, the whole idea of I got to wrap my brain around the fact that Domi is going to be wearing a Canadiens jersey.
Yeah,
it was something I still had to wrap my brain around for about 24 hours. But I like it for Arizona because I think Galchenyuk going to Arizona, again, not being under such a as we just mentioned, the Montreal media glare in this case, I think it could very well help him in regards to sort of, just kind of worrying about playing in this circumstance. It's not going to be as much of a hotbed. And again, you could say, well, is that a question of character in this case? And it's like, no, I just think, again, whatever his personal situation is with all the dirt that came out in Francois Gagnon's piece, or at least what he wrote, I think him going to Arizona is, for the most part, a good thing. It's a good thing for the Coyotes. I think they definitely up their skill level in their top 6. The question is whether or not I see him as a center or not. And right now, I'm not certain of that. I'm just not certain of the fact that he's a center. He didn't look like one in Montreal. You can give me all the underlying numbers you want.
Right.
This circumstance, my eyes don't lie. His skill set always seemed to be more of a wing. So in my view here, the fact that Montreal is also going to play Domi at wing even more evens this trade up in this circumstance, because at least they've recognized the player that they're getting is who he is.
Right, but it also exposes them even more in terms of, well, at least they could, right, they're weaker.
Whether or not there's another shoe to drop, whether or not they're going to get involved in trying to acquire Ryan O'Reilly.
Right, and that's what I was
about. Or another center in this circumstance, whether or not they draft one. But again, a draft one if they get like Kotkaniemi or somebody like that. But we'll see.
Well, you're leading me perfectly into the thing that I was going to bring up next, which was, there are reports now Eric Engels, formerly of Hockey Buzz, now with Sportsnet, he said, a week ago I didn't think that it was likely the Habs would pass on Philip Zadina at 3. Zadina's stock apparently is going down precipitously, Russ, which I don't understand, because
based on what and based on who?
Yeah, exactly. He says after speaking to several people, Engels goes on, it seems the Habs are locked in on Kotkaniemi. They may move down to take him later in the top 10, but it seems they're willing to take him at 3. So this is what we heard at the Combine, Russ. And I mean, I'm not casting aspersions on Kotkaniemi, because honestly, I've seen him, I think, once. So, and
I've seen him like 5, 6, 7 times. Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, this is the move of a desperate management team and a desperate team. And you should in the top 5 or the top 10 take the best player available, regardless of position. But this team is so bad off up the middle that they may make a pick that, I think he could be a good player, but I don't know whether he's worth the number 3. I would not be leaving Brady Tkachuk or Philip Zadina off of my draft list to take Kotkaniemi.
Yeah.
Well, 2 things on this. So first one is, yes, there will be some teams drafting for need in this draft.
Sure.
It's just the way it is. Like, it's the cap world now. You're not always going to take the best player on the board anymore. You're not. Now, Kokiniemi has a chance to be a number one center, but to me, it's like a 25% chance. So, but they still may grab that. They might. You might be right. If Philip Zadina's stock is dropping, if you don't want a dynamic goal scorer who's physically strong and skates great and seemingly terrific against all competition, hey, so be it. Even Kaya doesn't like the idea of it. The idea is this. They could take Kokiniemi, and it will turn the draft upside down, and that could sink Tkachuk a little because I think Ottawa is sold on Zadina. They flew him in, and I think that's who they want. So,
but I mean, it's a little tougher for Montreal where they are, right? Because they're number two, number three.
Montreal's three.
Montreal's three.
Sorry, I'm getting confused. Number three. So if you want to trade down to get a guy later, you're really dependent on finding the trade partner who wants to move up into top three. And this not being the deepest draft in the world, you may not find many takers because, again, when you're top three in the draft, if you're not thinking best player available, you better have a really good plan about what you're doing to expend that pick.
Like Columbus got ripped, but in the retrospect, they made the right pick for them.
And they
traded down, right? They traded down.
He's talking about when they took
Dubois right at that pick.
They took a Dubois pick, and everybody said, "Oh, it's too early. You can't take him here.
Yeah.
Not a center." Yada yada.
The main criticism was that they basically said very, very quickly after that they were planning to use him as a center, and I heard that he really didn't play center at all until the following year in junior. He was mostly a winger, and if you look at him now as an NHL center in his rookie year, I thought he was pretty damn good. But
and here's the other thing: Columbus didn't screw him up.
No, they kept him in junior another year.
They didn't say, okay, we're taking him higher than he should. We got to move him quick to justify this. They just let him do the natural progression, which is very important.
And there was criticism when I was at the World Juniors. I kept hearing this buzzing. Oh, look, Dubois is not scoring goals. Meanwhile, he was playing great defensive hockey as a center and very physical for that team. And I was like, leave him alone. He's playing really well here. Yeah. He doesn't always have to score. This is just because you think he should be more of a scorer because he was drafted at a certain draft position doesn't mean that that's the player he is.
And that's what these teams are seeing in Kotkaniemi because he's 6'2", 195 pounds. He'll probably grow an inch or two.
Not been a natural center his whole life either.
Right.
So there is a gamble factor here. And again, Brady Tkachuk would be gone by the second pick for me.
Right.
But again, it's easy to just, decide you want a guy, take him. And that's why this draft will get shaken up after the first pick probably after the first two. I think Carolina's taking Svechnikov. So after the first two, it will be shaken up a bit.
And that's where, the perfect scenario is somebody in the lower part of the top 10. Although the thing is, though, if the stock, and this is what Bob McKenzie said. He said multiple scouts have Zadina falling out of their top 5 now. I don't think it's because he has done anything wrong with his game, but I think it's because centerman Kotkaniemi and Hayton and defensemen Boquist, Hughes, Bouchard, and Dobson have really stepped up.
Okay, can I say something here? One more thing. So Barrett Hayton, very nice player, greasy kind of center, playmaker, can score a little bit. He's not a dynamic goal scorer. He's not a dynamic playmaker, but he's going to be a really good player. He kind of reminds me, I don't like to compare players, but I think he plays a similar game to Bo Horvat, and we all love Bo Horvat's game.
Yeah.
That means some team is going to take him over Philip Zadina. To me, that's crazy because Philip Zadina has so much more talent. This is not a slight at Hayton. This is just pointing out what Zadina has. And if teams are going to overlook that, there will be people second guessing them 3, 4, 5 years from now.
Well, this is where, and Anthony, this is where I think we're going to have fun on Friday and I've heard other commentators say the fun starts at number 3. I think Montreal, if they could move down a little bit, that there'd be for sure that they could get Kotkaniemi, say 6, 7, 8, whatever, there, they would trade down. And I think a team that really likes a Brady Tkachuk or really likes a Zadina would have an opportunity there. But the question is, who? Would that be the Rangers? Would they trade one of their high pick and one of the lower first to move up. I mean, there are teams with multiple picks.
Yeah, I mean, you could also, in the mix there. I mean, it makes for an interesting discussion. I think we know once we get past 5 or 6, we start to get into an area where we get into the bottom part of the first 10, and things start to get closer to interchangeable in terms of, especially if there's going to be a run on defensemen specifically. And I think there's a chance of that in this draft, because I think teams are going to be worried some of those guys are going to be coming off the board a little faster. It's possible. Again, I can't turn to you and say that we will not see a trade up. Again, Rangers would be interesting but they'd have to really like Zadina in this circumstance. I know when Joel Farabee certainly. I remember Russ obviously over the weekend when we did a mock draft on Edmonton radio. Russ stuck at 9, but the opportunity to get a Zadina if he's falling.
Oh, sure. I mean, that's a whole different.
I mean, you're going to make that move.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, there's some possibilities there.
I do want to say this. I mean, when we're looking at the draft and we're looking at these guys and we're looking at, let's say, Kotkaniemi goes 3rd. That's the safe way for the Habs to go if they decide, hey, whatever. If they're going to risk it though and trade down, let's say you're Vancouver. What are they, 7, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So let's say Vancouver puts out a phony word. Hey, we kind of like Kotkaniemi. Well, if Montreal has already sort of, thinking about trading, like, how could you trust teams? Like, you can't.
Right.
Like, this is a guy that could easily get slipped right off the board, and then Montreal has to get somebody else entirely, and then they're out of the 3rd spot too.
Or yeah,
they can really get screwed on this.
Better see. Go ahead, Peter.
I was just going to say, I mean, we also know that teams talk on the draft floor. Sure. And word gets out, someone sees a jersey. Okay, they're taking so-and-so at 4. It does seep out. The point is you got to find someone you can trust. And I think you make the best point at trust, Russ. And the one thing that's so different about the NHL, and I compare this to the NBA, is the NBA is really good at teams drafting a player for another team, then trading them, and swapping the players. And it's something I don't understand about the NHL.
Like Eli Manning, I was thinking about that too.
Yeah. And that's something the NHL doesn't do.
No.
That is kind of interesting. Now, the other thing with
the NBA does that too. You draft this player, I'll draft that player, then we'll
Yeah. And the other thing about, like, Anthony, to your point, if you believe some of the work, the data-driven work that's been done on the value of mid-range first-round picks. So let's take this year, and you're saying after 6, I think you said, it gets a little bit.
That 6, 7, 8 range, we start to get closer to interchangeable.
So let's cut the line at 10. Let's say out of the top 10.
10's a good number, actually.
Right? You chop it at 10. You may be way better if your player isn't there. You may be way better off trading down and getting an extra pick in the late, like in the second round, and adding more to what you get, as opposed to hoping you get someone you can work with if the guy isn't there.
And I can give you an example that certainly a team like Philadelphia, for example, who holds a 14 and 19 pick. Somebody see somebody they like at 19. Flyers have 1 second-round pick. They have no third-round picks.
Right.
You can potentially move down into the lower 20s, take somebody you really like, and then still have an additional second-round pick to either draft or potentially use in a trade scenario to get something you need.
It's all dependent on when certain teams come up, whether they're going to be teams that want to move up to that particular spot and whether they'd be willing to pay the price. I mean, I've heard, Kyle Dubas traded down a couple times when he was in control of the draft, and not control of the picking, but in control of the draft picks in 2015. And there's a lot of speculation coming out in Toronto that if he believes if their value they think is equal to some of the players that they may get at the top of the second round, that he could trade down. But who's going to trade up to 25? That's the thing, is you might be stuck there taking a pick at 25.
Here's my problem with this. And 2015 was definitely a different draft than this one, right? So I look at this one and I say, I really don't want to be outside of 45 picking my first and maybe my best pick of the draft. I don't want to be outside of that mark. And if I am, then I feel like I'm in trouble as a franchise. So like Calgary, unless you're going to make some amazing, picks in this draft, not having to pick in the first 3 rounds in this draft is a killer. I think it's a killer.
And that might be the reason why Calgary, and I wrote about this last week, and I think it's going to be discussed a lot between now and Friday. They don't have a pick until the 4th round. They're without a 1, 2, 3, and a 5 from all the deals that they made, and they have an excess of defensemen. They now not only defensemen on their NHL roster, they have 5 defensemen who I think are pretty good. Brody, Stone, Hamilton, Giordano, and I'm forgetting the 4th.
And I would not be surprised if, with Philadelphia having 3 picks in the first 50, Calgary and Philadelphia are talking, especially if the conversation turns, let's say, to Dougie Hamilton, a right shot 6'6" defenseman. You could pair with Ivan Provorov.
Yeah, line up, Anthony, because there's gonna be a lot of teams.
Oh, I know that. I'm just saying in terms of there's gonna be a lot of people lining up for it. But I guarantee you, again, if Philadelphia is looking to add to the roster, they've got a couple things, a first and a second round pick that could make,
So do the Rangers. The Rangers have 3 first-round picks. Right. Now, here's the thing about Calgary, and I see. I mean, I can't speak for you guys, but I'm going to assume I probably see a little more of the further out Western media stuff than you guys probably get, just due to proximity and things. There's been some people. One of them now writes for The Athletic, who've done some fairly decent work on TJ Brody.
Who doesn't work for The Athletic, by the way?
What?
Who doesn't work for The Athletic?
Does work.
After today, yeah, exactly.
Does work. Sorry, does work for The Athletic. Just, I don't need to pop him. He works at Athletic, right?
Sorry.
Anyways, he's a good writer. Very, very good insight. He's done some work that basically says it may be a pretty good idea for the Flames to sell high right now on TJ Brody. And people talk about Hamilton because he's sort of like the crown jewel in that decor. Giordano's got a long contract and he's aging, so you think Hamilton. But it's Brody who probably, 2 more years at 4.6. He's 28. He's probably the one they want to get rid of. And given the season Hamonic had, you're not going to get return on that. You're going to trade a first away for nothing on that. I can see Brody really being parlayed into something, particularly a late first round.
I actually think they'd be selling low on him, Peter, because he had a terrible year. According to our mutual friend Sean Vetter, he had a terrible year last year. Yeah. And with 2 years left and being the age that he is, I think his value is at his absolute lowest. If it was 2 years ago, I think they'd get a lot more. Plus, the Flames have Velimaki, they have Rasmus Anderson, they have Shillington. They have Adam Fox as a prospect who's unsigned.
Well, Fox isn't a guarantee, and Shillington is not a guarantee that he'll be a good NHLer either. No. So I wouldn't get rid of Brody. I don't think they have enough D to support the trade for that. I don't.
They'd be making a leap of faith, right? That's right.
Yeah, they would be.
Now, let's talk about some of the big names, and the rumors have really.
Well, actually, before we do the rumors, Mike,
go ahead.
I was going to do a little draft capsule, and since it involves Philly, and we mentioned Philly, I've got a list here. It's my list of right-handed defensemen, and now look. Ron Hextall is going to lead you down a little bit of a path for the draft. He's not going to lead you to the house. But I think too many people have decided this right-handed defenseman has to come in the first round, but he doesn't. He could come in the second or the third, and they might already have an idea, like a list like this. And some of these guys are obvious ones and some aren't. And some they can't get and some they can. But I listed a bunch of them, so I'm just going to read them off. Go. Adam Boqvist, Evan Bouchard, Ryan Merkley, Bodie Wild, Jet Wu, Kalen Addison, Axel Anderson, Ty Emerson, Philip Johansson, Christian Krieger, and Jacob Bernard Docker. Now, there's some real good ones on there that won't go in the first round. And because they have a couple, you said they have 2 picks in the second hand? Is that what you said?
No, they got one. They have 50.
50. So at 50, as an example, Jacob Bernard Docker could be there. I saw him in the Junior A All-Star game, and he's going to play for North Dakota, I believe. And he's a really good defenseman. Like, this guy could really play the position. So I would just say for Flyers fans, don't think that even if they draft a D-man in the first round, that he has to be a right-handed shot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it doesn't have to be a right-handed shot. And Hextall's kind of indicated that in his interview last week, that we can't get too hung up on that. I think what happened with Philadelphia is they could potentially knock back a few picks. Again, as we talked about before, 19 into the mid-20s, and you pick up an additional higher second-round pick, almost not quite copying the trade from a few years ago when they traded back from 18 to 22 and picked up 36. in drafting Rubtsov and LeBerge. But the pattern is there. If they're looking for multiple picks and they want to reload defensemen, I think having your chance of doing that is something you definitely consider. I think they're going to take I think they're going to take a forward and a defenseman. That's my gut feeling.
Yeah,
but I definitely think there's going to be – my feeling is there'll be a forward, and if they stay where they're right at, they stay at 19 and 50, I would not be surprised if both that any one of those three picks, two of them are defensemen.
You know, the one thing also, Ty Emberson's a guy who's sort of laying in the weeds because I've seen him play, top pairing for the NTDP, but he doesn't get talked about at all. This kid can play. So, again, your right-handed shot defenseman doesn't always have to be your best defenseman either. The reason you have him is because he's a right-handed shot and he can shoot the puck. Keep that in mind.
All right, let's talk about the big names, and the chatter is obviously picking up now, and it'll continue and grow bigger and bigger until Friday, and then through the weekend. And if they don't get moved by then, it'll be before July 1st. Now, the first name obviously is Erik Karlsson. I'm gonna just say what I think. I think with the specter of John Carlson being able to hit free agency, I don't think Vegas is going to trade multiple young assets to get Erik Karlsson, who has 1 year left on his contract. And maybe they can re-sign him. I'm not, but after giving up a 1, a 2, and a 3 for Tatar, I don't see them giving up Cody Glass or Brandstrom and a number of picks to get Karlsson. So I'm cooling on the Vegas thing. But Jim Matheson in the Edmonton Journal wrote over the weekend about a rumor regarding Karlsson and Edmonton and Draisaitl going to Ottawa. And this is the thing, and I agree with what he said. Eugene Melnyk is not taking a big contract on. The whole purpose of moving Erik Karlsson, besides the sideshow and everything else that happened that was revealed last week, is the fact that Eugene Melnyk wants to cut payroll by probably $20 million there and doesn't want to pay Erik Karlsson on a new deal. So I don't think he's taking an $8.5 million contract in Leon Draisaitl back in any deal. I think the deal for Karlsson, and I want to get everybody else's thought here, I think the deal for Karlsson is going to involve multiple prospects and first-round picks and not significant players coming back.
Sure. And I'm still wondering, because his name hasn't been mentioned in a while, is if Bobby Ryan still has to be part of the package, because we haven't heard that yet either. And I would imagine, given the gong show that is happening in Ottawa right now, there is probably no way Melnyk can stand firm and say, take Bobby Ryan too. There's too many messed up things going on there for him to hold firm on that.
Yeah.
But here's what I don't understand about Ottawa, in that they make the deal for Duchesne. They've got to give up next year's first rounder, basically. Mm-hmm. So it plays to what you said, Mike. They need a boatload of things that are coming back to them to fill holes that they're going to have eventually.
Right.
They have a revenue cash fall issue, apparently, where they have to be cautious about that. They want to have a new building, and they need to find some sort of direction to rebuild what this team is after you lose your cornerstone franchise player. This is probably not going to be something that gets fixed by simply trading Erik Karlsson. You're going to have to get deeper cuts and be a lot more surgical in what's wrong with your franchise. Mm-hmm. And we know it's not just what's on the ice, what's behind the bench, and what's sort of overseeing the bench. It's a systematic problem in there, and they've got to deal with a lot of things. Like, if there's ever a time to strip it to the ground, it's right now. It is this moment in time for Ottawa to do that. And I just don't know if Melnyk will let that happen, because he's got a false sense of belief of what.
But here's the thing.
The right moves are made.
Why strip Ottawa to the ground? They're closer to the ground than they are the Stanley Cup already. So, I don't think you need to strip them to the ground. I think they already have.
It's everything, though, Russ.
Huh?
It's everything that's going on there.
Well, but you can't I can only talk about the hockey players.
Right. No, I know that, but it's part and parcel. Right or wrong, truth, whatever it is, there's issues. Yeah, and that's all you have to say.
Well, if you're going to strip it to the ground, then and Elliot Friedman said this on the last 31 Thoughts podcast, and I completely agree with it, with the thought. If you're going to strip it down, if you're going to trade Carlson, if you're going to trade Hoffman, then you should be surrendering the first round pick to Colorado, because if you don't, and this team is a disaster next year, then it's like a Toronto Eric Lindros situation from 25 or more years ago, where the team was basically making sure that they didn't finish last overall to give up the franchise player, and ended up giving up Niedermeyer anyway. But
all of those things, though, nobody's showing up to a game this year. Nobody.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and the thing is, Russ, it's not only Hoffman, because his value's been dropped down. And Anthony, I want to get your thought on this. It's not only Hoffman, it's not only Carlson, and they're between a rock and a hard place with him in terms of probably he's not going to want to stay there. Mark Stone is an RFA.
Mm-hmm.
Matt Duchene is 1 year away from unrestricted free agency. Cody Ceci is an RFA and will expect to be paid fairly decent money. They've got a number of situations with a number of their top players, and it goes beyond Hoffman and Carlson. Anthony.
So we should just refer to this campaign as going to hell for Hughes. Best I could come up with on a short notice, guys.
Bravo.
I try. But I mean, Peter really nailed a lot of what I was going to say here with regards to what's going on in Ottawa. They just have the feeling of an organization that really does have to strip things down to the studs. And Russ, your point being about the fact that nobody's going to be really looking this year, nobody's going to the games. There's no better time to do that. And basically,
Melnick can't afford to lose his money, though. That's the problem. Melnick doesn't want to lose money hand over fist.
But you may, if you're in that kind of a spot, I get it. You keep a few guys here and there, but it's like for the most part, I think it's probably time where they got to just.
I think either way he's losing money.
For lack of a better word.
I really think either way he's losing money.
Well, he's going to lose some. He doesn't want to lose the maximum amount. And I think in a year, he's going to have his stadium deal, arena deal, and then we won't be talking about this anymore. And I think that's all they're trying to do. And I think that's the forgotten thing in this whole equation is they're going to get that deal done. It will happen. And if it happens in the next year, they don't have these same financial constraints anymore. They don't have any anymore. And that's why you don't strip it down to the ground, because they do have relief in dollars coming down the road.
Okay, big name number 2, John Tavares. The talk over the weekend all stemmed from the Darren Drager report that he's been continuing conversations with the Islanders ever since him and Lou Lamoriello met secretly before Lou was even named the team president of the whatever, the president of hockey operations with the Islanders. But no deal has been struck, and I think that every day that gets closer to the 5-day window, I think the odds go up that he's at least going to listen to offers. But I don't know, Russ. I think that the odds are now that Lou's going to get it done. Otherwise, why would they be talking? But again, I don't understand him not listening, at least going out there and listening to other teams before he says, okay, I'm going to resign with the Islanders.
And that's my point as well. It's like, if you are basically me, if I'm John Tavares, right, and let's say Peter is Lou, and we're negotiating, and Peter says, I don't want you to go out there and look out there. I'll say, okay, pay me the max deal. Nobody's ever gotten the max deal. You pay me the max deal. We go have a press conference tomorrow. Peter, what do you want to do?
Now,
let's Peter answer.
But what is the max deal? 8 years, or are you talking about max money? 20%. Well, no.
What is max money? The max percentage.
Max money is 20% of the cap. So say the cap goes up to 80, it's $16 million a year.
No, I'm not going to do that at all.
Okay.
John Tavares is not a $16 million player, and frankly,
but you don't think that it's me, Peter. So I appreciate you not thinking I'm not a $16 million player.
You're not.
Well, F you. That's one thing. I don't need to send that through my agent. But the other thing is, okay, so now I'm going to look out, see what's out there, because clearly you're not going to pay what it takes to keep me from looking. That's my basic point here. There's no money on earth that Lou is going to offer him, even though Ledecky said his checkbook is open. If you remember, for getting the arena deal done, his checkbook needs to be open for keeping Tavares to not hit the market at all.
Name me one name one NHL player that's worth 16 million?
Nobody's worth it, Peter, but he's worth it to that franchise, and that's what you now have to decide. Because
what does John Tavares do by signing him to? Let's not even use 16 million because it's a silly number. Let's use 12 million.
Okay.
What does John Tavares do for that franchise that recoups $12 million for them?
I'll tell you what it does. It gives them stability, a franchise player. It keeps everybody else calm. It gets other free agents still there because they do still want to play with Tavares, especially with Lou there now. And it helps when they open up their new arena. No offense to Matt Barzal, unless he's a top 10 player in the league, he's not going to be the marquee name that you need to open up a new arena in New York.
Peter, what it prevents is the downfall of that franchise if he's not there. It's more the factor of what they will be without him.
Right.
Now he may not be worth. Yeah, go ahead.
Here's the problem. That has to be part of your risk assessment.
Mm-hmm.
And how much worse do they have to be? Like, I mean, how much worse do they have to go? They've got players. They've got a couple bad contracts and no goaltending. Okay, let me ask you this. Whose problems would you rather have? Ottawa's or the Islanders?
I'd rather have the Islanders' problems
because they're fixable. Ottawa's they're 5 years out from doing anything sensible or having a hope.
But the idea is, Peter, it means something to have that marquee name in New York. It does, especially when you're opening up a new arena and you want fans to go simply beyond the point that
arena doesn't open. They haven't even turned soil.
We don't. That's the discussion for another day. But all I'm saying is,
but you can't hold on. You can't say we're opening an arena and he has value if there isn't even a guarantee the arena is going to be there. And there's
not going to tell you that. We're assuming there is a guarantee and it's still good.
Well, then I'm assuming Tavares is reasonable and recognises he's not worth $12 million. I mean, we can all make assumptions.
When you're going to get the most money you can get, when was the last time you were reasonable when you walked into your boss's office looking for a raise? Seriously.
Well, when I wanted a raise, I was reasonable, but I also not an elite talent.
In your mind, you were. I bet you your boss had other things.
No, but the point being is that you can't, like, I'd love to compare the average Joe on the street to being an NHL or a professional athlete, but you can't because there's only 30 places he can work if he wants to work on this continent.
Yeah. By the way,
so that changes everything.
To compare the two, the Islanders have pneumonia. The Ottawa Senators have terminal cancer. That's my comparison.
I don't know. Like
I don't know, let's not use the word terminal.
Started the show morbid to begin with, Mike. What is
this? Is just piled on a level that I don't know if we needed to go. But
sorry, folks.
You're gonna plane at some point this week, and you're not like.
Yeah, great. I'm not going to make any other references. So okay, let's move.
One more thing. I just want to say, I think Lou is looking for that number to get Tavares to not take the window, basically like Monty Hall or who's it, Drew Carey now. I don't know who does Let's Make a Deal.
Wayne Brady.
Wayne Brady offers you money to not take that door, right? And you have to decide. That's what the Islanders are trying to do right now. And
offer me some money. Offered me some money not to watch Wayne Brady.
But they're not succeeding at it. Is what my point is.
Now let's talk about the team right here in River City, the Buffalo Sabres, because a lot of Ryan O'Reilly, as you mentioned, Anthony, before, a lot of Ryan O'Reilly stuff is coming up, and this is the thing. We know of the disenchantment that O'Reilly had at the end of the season, the comments that he made, which were probably not the wisest thing for him to do. We know the off the ice problem that he had the previous summer. I think the biggest problem with him is the contract is $7.5 million for another 5 years. I think he's still a good player. He's not old. He's not the fastest player in the world, but he is a center, and teams like Montreal are going cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs for centers. So I think they can move him. I just don't know whether all this talk is realistic, because I still think they're looking at possibly moving Ristolainen, and I think they get a lot more for Ristolainen than they would for O'Reilly.
Yeah, I agree. And again, it's what your valuation is. And also, as Peter says, risk assessment as well in terms of bringing in a Ryan O'Reilly, especially with that cap hit with that many years remaining on it. I like O'Reilly. It's just, to me, it's become readily apparent that he's not a guy who necessarily lifts the rest of the roster.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the biggest concern for me with O'Reilly.
I mean,
and that's I mean, I think he's a good player. It's just based off of that. I think teams are going to have some concern, even with people being cuckoo for centers. You got to keep these things in mind. This is where we're going to have to see what kind of cap retention could potentially be involved in a potential trade here.
Here's the thing. I thought all along he'd be the first guy out, even before Ristolainen, because of the comments he made last year, right? Even if he's being completely honest, it was ill-timed, considering you have somebody new at the helm and you're trying to go in a new direction and you're still talking about the old BS. So with Ryan O'Reilly, if he gets traded to a team, and I think, look, he is a really good player. He can still score 65 points. He wins faceoffs. Like Anthony said, he's good. But you have to bring him into a team that has a leadership core that will basically tell him to shut up when he's going to say the wrong thing. And, you know, the Buffalo Sabres aren't there. They're a young team. They're Jack Eichel's team. They don't have anybody to sort of, you know, tell him to pipe down. If he goes somewhere where they can tell him to do that, he could be fine in the locker room. But that's what they need to do. They need to have like a strong veteran presence wherever he gets traded to.
Yeah, and to my mind, Montreal is not a fit for one reason. If he goes to Montreal, he's the number one center in Montreal, and he's not a number one center.
I think that's bad. I agree with you.
That's part of the problem when you look at teams that have cap space and maybe have something you can send back that would be desirable to Buffalo. He's not maybe the best fit, and you elevate him to a point where he would be the number one center. And another team, I think, that it's the same kind of thing. You know, probably they can flip someone back. He probably has just enough of the leadership core there, but maybe not as much as we think is needed, but enough. Is Carolina, and they need a center, but he's not the right person for Carolina, and there's no way Dundon's going to spend $7.5 million on a center without someone, right? But in theory, he fits, but he doesn't fit.
I think a dark horse for him would be, and they have a ton of young players, and that's probably what Buffalo would be interested in, is St. Louis, because after they traded Stastny, now they have a hole up the middle, and they have young guys like Robbie Fabry, who are supposedly they would be willing to trade, plus some of the young guys. I think that might work, but talking about Stastny, I mean, he's the number 2 center in this behind, but in most people's mind, behind Tavares in terms of the biggest center free agent. Has there been any movement on the ball in Winnipeg on Stastny?
There has believed to have been some talks, and that's about it. There hasn't, Chevy's in lockdown right now, and he literally, the media is not even talking about the Jets. Like, it's gone completely quiet. He's, and interesting enough, Stastny actually had to move out of his house because he used to live about 4 blocks away from me, because a person I know needed the house and knew the landlord. And Stastny was kind of waffling. He was at a month-to-month deal with the guy. And this guy's house, the person I know, had a garage fire and he needed a place to live for like 6 months. And he knew the owner. And he's like, hey, I got 6 months guaranteed. I don't know what's going on with you. You're out. So he's not even in town anymore. Like, he was supposed to be staying here for a bit. He's going to hang out with Steen, because Steen comes back in the off season. They're really good friends. Apparently he's flown the coop and gone. So, I think they're going to have some, very sort of courteous conversations, but the numbers just don't add up.
I'll give you the team that I think he'd be a really good fit for, and that would be St. Louis. They're a little short on centers right now.
Yeah, going back to St. Louis, though?
Yeah. No, Ryan O'Reilly I'm talking about.
Oh, right. That's what I said.
Yeah.
Was O'Reilly.
Getting traded to St. Louis, yes.
Yeah.
I think that would make sense because they're definitely short on centers. If you look at them, then you can slot them. You'll slot them behind Braden Shen. That's fine. At the end of the day, you'll probably have the O'Reilly line out there more late in games when you want to win faceoffs anyhow. So it's not really a matter if it's a 1 or a 2 line anyhow. Mm-hmm. So I think that makes sense. They have prospects. They'll handle the cap hit. I think that's a team that could really use a guy like that, and Buffalo can get the guys they need. Maybe it's a Fabry, and a few other things. To me, that's a good trade partner.
Now, go ahead.
I was going to throw out another name because I just looked and I was thinking about them, and they've been quiet, and they probably want to make a move and sort of push back given the strength of the Central. Is what about the Stars? Because they're going to have Spezza coming off after this year of $7.5 million.
Yeah, but
the Caps,
but they have to sign Sagan.
Oh, right.
Sagan's a UFA after next year. And I think that's the reason why. That money, that $7.5 million that Spezza is being paid right now, I'd say more than half of it is going to Sagan.
Okay, so here's the thing, though.
Yeah, that's a good point.
If the Dallas Stars become a big player in the John Tavares sweepstakes,
yes,
and offer him a big deal, they for 1 year could literally go for it like they've done before. And if it doesn't work out, maybe they cut ties with Sagan. Like that could happen.
Yes, it could. Now, if putting a list together of the unrestricted free agent centers, that the center pool is, and I'm not insulting them, but when the third ranked center is Tyler Bozak, then it's not exactly a really deep free agent class. And this is I've been saying for a couple months, Tyler Bozak will not be back with the Maple Leafs if he expects to get anything more than a 2-year deal. And the way the free agent market is looking right now, Tyler Bozak at 32 years old, a good face-off guy who scored, in the 40-point range, he's going to get a 3 or 4 year contract offer because there are no centers out there. So Anthony, I think there's absolutely no chance that Tyler Bozak ends up back in Toronto unless he takes a sweetheart short-term contract from Toronto.
Yeah, I highly doubt he's going to be back. And again, with so many prospects in system that can potentially fill in those areas that Bozak plays, I think there's, in my mind, he's not going to be. If he comes back, it has to be on a shorter term deal. Again, with the paucity of centers on the market.
No, Russ, I talked to you about this before the show. Larry Brooks came out with a column over the weekend talking about a number of different Ranger players. We know the Rangers are in a rebuild. The two names that were prominent, and I connected the one to Toronto because of his situation with New York after. Now it was with Elaine Vigneault as coach and not their new coach Quinn, but it was Vladislav Nemestikov. He scored 20 goals with Tampa Bay last year. He gets traded to the Rangers in the Brian McDonough deal, and in 19 games he had 2 goals and 2 assists.
Because they just Vigneault totally misused him. At times he was on the 4th line, then he's on the 3rd line. Like he never really got a chance, right? Because Vigneault is coaching for his job. Right. He doesn't know this kid. He doesn't play him. So, yeah, I do think he's one of those guys that'll get traded. I do think the Rangers don't want to sign him, even if it's only $2 million, because, again, they don't know how he's going to be with their new coach. They don't really have a good baseline on him.
Right.
He probably doesn't have a great baseline on him either, because when has he really had a chance to watch him? So I think he'll be collateral damage. If you look at, you were going to say, if you were talking about BC.
Well, no, I was just going to say the reason I'm connecting Nemestikov to Toronto is because he's still an RFA. He made a little less than $2 million last year. If they qualify him, it'll be over $2 million. And for a player that you may not want, that's a pretty hefty chunk of change. Nemestikov's dad is a scout in the Leaf organization. He's their scout in Russia. So, that may mean nothing. It may mean something because it didn't mean anything in the Jimmy Vesey situation, but I think it could mean something, and it would possibly be a good fit. So now Vesey, you're mentioning, Russ?
Yeah, so I guess Vesey, you told me, got mentioned in this. And to me, it's ludicrous if they're even thinking about trading a guy. Like he had 16 and 17 goals. That's what he is. He scores goals. He plays greasy. He gets in guys' faces. He can play a little smarter, and I think he will. But this is the guy you have, and he comes at a very reasonable rate. You have to have guys like this, even if you want to bring along a young team. Why in the world are you trading a low-value guy who actually could put the puck in the net? You wouldn't. So, I don't think he's going anywhere. And now Kevin Hayes, for the 25 goals that he had, and dare I say a lot of them were garbage goals, he's a very low IQ hockey player. his hockey IQ. Go look online. You can see some of these offsides that he has are not just a little offside; they're like big offsides. Or some of these turnovers. Does he have the ability? Sure. Did he drive teams crazy? Go ask Chicago. He did.
You know what? Hayes is the perfect guy to sell to the Leafs because half the fan base will believe Babcock's such a genius he can turn him into.
No, he's right about that.
No, but salary wise, he's not, because he's going to after coming off a 25 goal year, he's going to be expecting a long term deal at pretty decent money, and
here's Mike. I know what you're trying to go with this in terms of how can the Leafs find someone that's a better value than the Bozak that doesn't force Marner to have to play center and stuff like that. And I like your thinking. Like, I think it's creative. You will always run into the same problem of salary. And Nemestikov, yeah, you could bridge him or whatever, and that's fine. You're delaying the pain to see if it works. But at that point, a lot of people also believe that the solution for a lot of the Leafs problems are actually coming from the Marlies, who are a damn good team. And,
I believe some. Sorry.
I'm just sort of saying, like, I know where your line of logic's going, and I don't disagree with it, but I just think it delays the inevitable that's going to be the crunch for the Leafs, right?
I believe some of the solution is promoting from within. I think that they're going to do that with guys like Andreas Janssen and Grunstrom and a few other guys, and then over the next couple of years. But they have this 1 year window, Peter, that I know that they're going to use. They have $22 million under the cap this year, and then the following year that's when the kick in on Marner and Matthews deal will happen. So if they either have to, we'll be getting, like, I wrote a column about this, if Joe Thornton decides, or if San Jose decides they don't want to re-sign Joe Thornton as a 1 year stopgap, that makes a ton of sense for Toronto. Trading for a Laterra, if from Philadelphia, if they want to dump his contract and the Leafs think he can still play center, that makes sense. I mean, something like that makes sense because they need a buffer in case a Miro Aaltonen can't play third line center for them.
All right, so here's the thing. Maybe the most overrated thing that I've heard in the last couple weeks, and this is true of any Calder Cup champion, is how many of these guys, don't scratch it, Mike, it makes it worse. How many of these guys can get to the next level and stick? And if you go back and think about teams that have won the Calder Cup, it's not as many as you think. I mean, I've heard, with the Marlies team, hey, it could be up to like 5 or 6 guys. It's not going to be. Odds are it will not be.
Eventually it could be, but next year it won't be.
Yeah,
next year
is like the perfect storm, not including injuries, not including other players emerging, not including free agents. You know what I mean? Like, this is I think they're not going to count on the Marlies.
I think the mitigating factor here. I think the mitigating factor here, Russ, is the fact that the GM of the Marlies is now the GM of the Leafs.
I know, but I think that even that, looking at that, is not even the guarantee that will happen, because if that were the case, again, how many guys from the Texas Stars the last time they won made it to the Dallas Stars and made them better?
Couple of the defensemen, Lindell.
Remember those great Hershey Bears teams?
Yeah.
Like the late 2000s and stuff. How many moved up? Neuwirth. That's the only name I can think of.
Yeah,
I still remember with the Phantoms, but again, some of them were late arrivals. Like
the late arrivals you can't count. Cardinal Richards, you couldn't count.
But Sharp, he made it to the NHL. Then obviously went to Chicago. Nitamaki was an NHL goalie.
Okay.
Yeah. There's at least 5 or 6 guys off that roster, but I agree in terms of it's not as many as you think.
It's not going to be a win. It's not going to be a windfall.
But I mean, Anthony, I think you see the point. Is you exactly said it. There's guys. But where did they end up? They didn't stick around with the team. They got traded.
Well,
they moved on. Like, they were actually out of the organization, which is also interesting in itself.
I think that's a possibility as well with some of the Marlies players. It's like I mentioned on one of the previous webcasts, and I wrote on one of my columns, is that a guy like Garrett Sparks, who won every award for a goaltender in the AHL and now has won a Calder Cup. He's 24 without options, with another year left in his contract. And for a market out there that's going to pay a first-round pick for Philip Grubauer, who's not proven really.
Yeah.
That might be a risk that's worth taking with some team. I think that, because Sparks will never clear waivers. No way.
If Dubas is smart and he knows he's got a year, with all this cap space, he should be on the phone every other day. He should have Chevy's dockside phone at Lake of the Woods on speed dial to just get Tyler Myers for someone. And like, I mean, right D, he's gonna, you eliminate the Ron Hainsey thing. He's a UFA after next year. You got 1 year.
Yeah, but
You not even want to
How do you
keep
know
him.
Chevy has phone service in the woods? He might not have phone service.
He does. I know where he is.
And what
I
makes
know built the
All
software.
right, that's a little scary. We got to leave that alone.
and what makes you think he's going to give him away? That's the thing.
Well, he's not going to give him away, but you can. The Jets have a cap issue that facing them right now.
Right.
That is going to determine some things. And Tyler Myers solves a big problem because he's 3.5 cash, 5 cap hit. It's the easiest solution. I just don't know if he'll do it, but at least they trade him out of the conference.
Yeah. And just the last note here, because I saw a comment from a Chicago writer regarding Marian Hossa that the Blackhawks are intent on trading Hossa's contract, which has 4 years. I looked at this. This is the contract that John Chaika is probably doing backflips for. $5.25 million cap hit, $1 million money for the next 4 years. Arizona will go insane if they,
hell of a line with Doc. Think of that line with him and Datsuk.
Well, Datsuk's a free agent now, so he can.
That's right. I missed that.
But Dave
Pronger there too.
Bowen still got a year.
Pronger, yeah, I got to check on that. I think Pronger's deal might.
I think Pronger's out.
Pronger's done.
Pronger's done.
Pronger's done.
Amazing roster.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Good show. We will be back tomorrow with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. Hopefully, we'll be back for Anthony Mangione, for Peter Tessier, for Russ Cohen. I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.